I want you to notice again verse 24 and verse 25. Jesus said, "Show me a penny. Whose image and superscription hath it?" They answered and said, "Caesar's." And he said unto them, "Render therefore unto Caesar the things which be Caesar's, and unto God the things which be God's." Today is the day in 1775 that the shot was fired which was heard round the world, and America's war for independence was on. I want to read you this morning an eyewitness account of those events from the pastor of the church in Lexington by the name of Jonas Clark. This preacher was intricate to the story of what has been called now the Battle of Lexington. And I want to give you his personal narrative, his eyewitness account of what happened on that day. It'll only take me a few minutes to read this. And I quote now Pastor Jonas Clark. "As it was not consistent with the limits of a single discourse to give a full account of the particulars of this most savage and murderous affair, the following plain and faithful narrative of facts, as they appeared to us in this place, may be a matter of satisfaction. On the evening of the 18th of April, 1775, we received two messages, the first verbal, the other by express in writing, from the Committee of Safety, who were then sitting in the westerly part of Cambridge, directed to the Honorable John Hancock, Esquire, who with the Honorable Samuel Adams, Esquire, was then providentially with us, informing that 8 or 9 officers of the King's troops were seen just before night passing the roads towards Lexington in a musing, contemplative posture, and it was suspected they were out upon some evil design. As both these gentlemen had been frequently and even publicly threatened by the enemies of this people," that's Hancock and Adams, of course, "both in England and America, with the vengeance of the British administration, and as Mr. Hancock in particular had been more than once personally insulted by some officers of the troops in Boston, it, as not without some just ground, supposed that under cover of the darkness, sudden arrest, if not assassination, might be attempted by these instruments of tyranny. To prevent anything of this kind, 10 or 12 men were immediately collected in arms to guard my house through the night." You see, Mr. Hancock and Mr. Adams were spending the night with the pastor in his home. Thus, the men of his church were guarding them around the house that night. Back to the narrative. In the meantime, said officers passed through this town on the road towards Concord. It was therefore thought expedient to watch their motions and, if possible, make some discovery of their intentions. Accordingly, about 10 o'clock in the evening, 3 men on horses were dispatched for this purpose. As they were peaceably passing the road towards Concord in the borders of Lincoln, they were suddenly stopped by said officers, who rode up to them and, putting pistols to their breasts and seizing their horses' bridles, swore if they stirred another step, they should all be dead men. The officers detained them several hours as prisoners, examined, searched, abused, and insulted them, and in their hasty return, supposing themselves discovered, they left them in Lexington. Said officers also took into custody, abused, and threatened with their lives several other persons, some of whom they met peaceably passing on the road, others even at the doors of their dwellings, without the least provocation on the part of the inhabitants, or so much as a question asked by them. Between the hours of 12 and 1 on the morning of the 19th of April, We received intelligence by express from the Honorable Joseph Warren, Esquire, at Boston, that a large body of the King's troops, supposed to be a brigade of about 12 or 1,500, were embarked in boats from Boston and gone over to land on Leckmere's Point in Cambridge, and that it was shrewdly suspected that they were ordered to seize and to destroy the stores, and you're going to hear that word stores. It's talking about the cache of arms in various places, some in private homes, some in retail shops, such as a gun shop that we would have in our community, etc. So when you hear that word stores, that's what he's referring to, is the cache of arms. To seize and destroy the stores belonging to the colony then deposited at Concord, in consequence of General Gage's unjustifiable seizure of the provincial magazines of powder at Medford and other colony stores in several other places. Upon this intelligence, as also upon information of the conduct of the officers as above mentioned, the militia of this town was alarmed and ordered to meet on the usual place of parade, not with any design of commencing hostilities upon the King's troops, but to consult what might be done for our own and the people's safety, and also to be ready for whatsoever service Providence might call us out to upon this alarming occasion, in case overt acts of violence or open hostility should be committed by this mercenary band of armed and bloodthirsty oppressors. About the same time, 2 persons were sent express to Cambridge, if possible, to gain intelligence of the motions of the troops and what route they took. The militia met according to order and waited the return of the messengers, that they might order their measures as occasion should require. Between 3 and 4 o'clock, one of the expresses returned, informing that there was no appearance of the troops on the roads, either from Cambridge or Charlestown, and that it was supposed that the movements of the army the evening before were only a feint to alarm the people. Upon this, therefore, the militia company was dismissed for the present, but with orders to be within call of the drum, waiting the return of the other messenger, who was expected in about an hour or sooner, if any discovery should be made of the motions of the troops. But he was prevented by their silent and sudden arrival at the place where he was waiting for intelligence, so that, after all this precaution, we had no notice of their approach till the brigade was actually in the town, and upon a quick march within about 1.25 miles of the meeting house and place of parade. However, the commanding officer thought best to call the company together, not with any design of opposing so superior a force, much less of commencing hostilities, but only with a view to determine what to do, when and where to meet, and to dismiss and disperse. Accordingly, about half an hour after 4 o'clock, alarm guns were fired and the drums beat to arms, and the militia was collecting together. Some, to the number of about 50 or 60, or possibly more, were on the parade, others were coming towards it. In the meantime, the troops, having thus stolen a march upon us, and to prevent any intelligence of their approach, having seized and held prisoners several persons whom they met unarmed upon the road, seemed to come determined for murder and bloodshed, and that whether provoked or not. When within about a 1/4 mile of the meeting house, they halted, and the command was given to prime and load, which being done, they marched on till they came up to the east end of said meeting house, in sight of our militia, collecting as aforesaid, who was about 12 or 13 rods distant. Immediately upon their appearing so suddenly and so nigh, Captain Parker, who commanded the militia company, ordered the men to disperse and take care of themselves and not to fire. Upon this, our men dispersed. But many of them, not so speedily as they might have done, not having the most distant idea of such brutal barbarity and more than savage cruelty from the troops of the British King as they immediately experienced. For no sooner did they come in sight of our company, but one of them, supposed to be an officer of rank, was heard to say to the troops, expletive, "We will have them." Upon which the troops shouted aloud, "Huzza!" and rushed furiously towards our men. About the same time, 3 officers, supposed to be Colonel Smith, Major Pitcairn, and another officer, advanced on horseback to the front of the body, and coming within 5 or 6 rods of the militia, one of them cried out, "Ye villains, ye rebels, disperse, expletive, disperse!" One of them, whether the same or not is not easily determined, said, "Lay down your arms," expletive, "lay down your arms."